When someone you trusted, someone who stood beside you, suddenly walks away. It's not about blame. It's about what happens within. Konnichiwa. Nasreen here from Toronto, Canada. How are you today? I hope you're feeling grounded and at ease. But if not, don't worry. By the end of this video, I trust you'll feel a little more centered and maybe even a little lighter. Here we talk about personal growth, energy healing, and the deeper teachings of Reiki, helping you align your mind, body, and soul so you can live with more presence and purpose. Today's message is one that's been moving through my heart, a message that has come with pain, reflection, and ultimately deep clarity. There's a word in Japanese that kept ringing in my mind. Uragiri. It means betrayal. But it's not just a translation. It's an experience. When I first sat with it, I had to look up the English word because the feeling of it is just different in Japanese. More layered, more personal. Have you ever felt betrayed? That sting that says, I didn't see this coming. The dull ache that follows. How could they? This isn't a story about the other person. It's not about blame. It's about what happens within. When someone you trusted, someone who stood beside you, suddenly walks away. And in doing so, disregards everything you thought you shared. Let's talk about what to do when that happens. Not long ago, a respected member of our Japanese online community, a fellow teacher, and someone who had been closely involved, chose to step away. It was a recent and unexpected decision, and at first it was communicated with grace. She described it as a graduation, and I accepted that with respect and a sense of closure. But soon after, I learned that her departure wasn't as simple or as aligned as it had initially seemed. Certain actions she took publicly and energetically revealed a divergence from the values we hold in our community. What she began to offer stood in contrast to the very principles she once shared and upheld with us. At first, I tried to remain neutral. I reminded myself that people grow in different directions, that we don't always understand why others choose what they choose. But the more I sat with it, the more something else began to rise. That subtle, unmistakable sting of betrayal. Not because she left, but because of how she left. Because something once rooted in mutual respect and shared values had suddenly shifted into something unfamiliar and unsettling. This is not a story about blame. It's a reflection on what it feels like when someone you trusted no longer walks beside you. When the energy of a relationship you believed in changes without warning. When I first began to understand the full picture, I felt a swirl of emotions, confusion, sadness, and then a rising wave of anger. anger not just at the situation, but at myself for trusting too easily, for not recognizing the signs earlier, for feeling caught off guard. But as those feelings surfaced, I also knew something important. If I stayed in that energy, I'd only be reinforcing the wound. So I gave myself space to feel it, yes, but also to look deeper. Because betrayal, as painful as it is never just about the other person. It's also about us, about how we interpret the experience, about what meaning we attach to it, and how we choose to move forward. And the impact of betrayal isn't always loud. It can be subtle, like a ripple in your energy. You find yourself questioning your clarity, your discernment. You notice a hesitation in your heart where there used to be openness. You feel a tightness in the body, like your trust was interrupted, and now you're holding your breath. I had to remind myself, it's okay to not see everything. It's okay to feel deeply. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me honest. And in that honesty, I began to find compassion for myself. These moments have a strange way of revealing what we are ready to see, what we are meant to release. They're mirrors, not just of the other person's choices, but of our own growth. And maybe you felt this too, when someone you trusted chose a different path. And you were left holding the silence, wondering what it meant. Wondering what part of you to protect and what part of you to keep wide open. That's where the healing begins. Not by closing down, not by blaming, but by returning inward, by asking, what does this awaken in me? Where am I still seeking something from the outside? And how can I come back to what I know is true? In moments like these, I come back to Reiki, not just as a practice, but as a way of life. Reiki teaches us to return to alignment, to remember who we are beneath the stories and the roles. It invites us to be present with what is, without needing to control or fix, and to act from that place of presence with clarity, not reaction. One of the greatest teachings I've learned through Reiki is that energy speaks louder than words. You can sense when something is in alignment and when something isn't. And when someone steps out of alignment, not just with you, but with shared values, you don't need to match that energy. You simply stand in your own. And that's what I choose to do. I looked around at our community the people still here, the teachers who show up with integrity, the members who support each other with kindness, the shared wisdom, the heart, the authenticity of this space. That's what we've built. That's what we're still building together. And that doesn't get shaken by one person's choices. If anything, moments like these shine a light on how strong our foundation truly is. They remind us why we are here, why we are careful with our energy, why core principles, tradition, and alignment still matter, not just as ideas, but as lived truths. Because when integrity is tested, it doesn't just reveal who someone else is, it reveals who you are. And I choose to stand in clarity, in kindness, in truth. To those of you watching, whether you've recently felt betrayed or you're carrying the weight of something unresolved, I want to say this gently. You are not alone. These moments happen. They shake us, yes, but they also shape us. Let's take a simple example. Imagine a friend, someone you laughed with, shared quiet moments with, maybe confided in. A connection that felt steady, honest, meaningful. And then, one day, things shift. They stop showing up. Or maybe they say something hurtful, or they quietly begin to drift until you realize they're no longer standing beside you the way they used to. There's no big argument, no explanation, just a silence that leaves you questioning everything. In that moment, you're left holding the ache and the choice. The choice is always ours. We can close off, shut down. We can promise ourselves never to trust again, never to get too close. We build walls, we convince ourselves it's safer that way. Or we can take a breath. We can come back to our center. Not with blind optimism, but with wisdom. Not with resentment, but with clarity. We can choose to stay open because our hearts are strong enough to feel, to heal, and to love again. Because betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can refine you. It can remind you. It can return you to yourself. It shows you what you truly value. It reveals the strength of your own integrity. And it gives you a deeper understanding of how you wish to walk forward. So I invite you to reflect. Where in your life are you still holding on to a wound from someone else's choice? What part of you is ready to come back into alignment? And how can you show up not with fear, but with clarity. Let's keep building something real. Let's keep choosing authenticity. Let's stay rooted in the core principles of Reiki and the quiet power of integrity. And next week, I'll guide you through a meditation to help you process betrayal, reconnect with your inner trust, and gently release what no longer belongs in your energy. Until then, me first with a smile.